Could the future of our food depend on the dance between agricultural productivity, food security, and climate resilience? Let's start with the first answer in our triad, agricultural productivity. This term signifies the output of agricultural work, be it crop yield or livestock produced, compared to the inputs utilized. It's a vital pulse point for any economy leaning on agriculture. However, climate change disrupts this rhythm with extreme weather events, shifting rainfall patterns, and rising temperatures, which can all lead to diminished crop yields and livestock productivity. Next, we have food security, the second answer in our troupe. Imagine having, at all times, both physical and economic access to enough food to fulfill dietary needs for a healthy and productive life. That's food security. It's directly linked to the first answer, agricultural productivity, as any dip in the latter can lead to food supply shortages, inflated prices, and reduced access to food, thus undermining food security. Our final dancer is climate resilience. In the context of agriculture, it represents the agricultural sector's capacity to absorb, recover, and adapt to climatic shocks like droughts, floods, and heat waves. Building this resilience is crucial to maintaining agricultural productivity and ensuring food security amidst the changing climate. The dance these three perform is intricate indeed. When everything is in sync, we see a virtuous cycle where innovative and resilient agricultural practices not only enhance productivity, but also secure food availability. This stability then allows for further investments in resilience and innovation, creating a sustainable loop of improvement and adaptation. However, if the rhythm falters, we witness a vicious cycle where climate change's negative impacts on agricultural productivity lead to food insecurity. This insecurity then diverts resources away from long-term resilience building, making the agricultural sector more vulnerable to future climatic shocks. Our dance floor extends beyond the fields and farms. Grassroots movements, policy reforms, and societal changes all play pivotal roles in shaping this dance. They can help drive the triad towards a more sustainable and resilient future. As we delve into this intricate dance, remember the stakes are high. Our food future hangs in the balance. Agricultural productivity, a backbone of economies, is under threat from a formidable foe, climate change. When we talk about agricultural productivity, we're referring to the output of agricultural work relative to the inputs used. It could be the bushels of wheat harvested per acre or the liters of milk produced per cow. Essentially, it's how efficiently we can turn resources like land, water, and labor into food. And the truth is, it's a significant part of any country's economy that leans heavily on agriculture. But here's where things get tricky. Climate change, with its extreme weather events, changing rainfall patterns, and soaring temperatures, is a direct threat to agricultural productivity. Imagine a farmer who's used to predictable rain patterns, now facing extended droughts or unexpected floods. Or consider livestock farmers grappling with heat waves that sicken their animals. These climate shifts can drastically reduce crop yields and livestock productivity, and the impacts of climate change aren't just limited to farms. They reverberate through the entire food chain. When productivity declines, the supply of food decreases, while the demand remains the same or even grows. This imbalance can cause food prices to skyrocket, making it harder for families to put food on the table. Moreover, a decrease in agricultural productivity can have cascading effects on the wider economy. It can result in job losses in the agricultural sector, reduce income for farming communities, and increase the cost of living for everyone. So, it's clear that maintaining and improving agricultural productivity is crucial, not just for feeding the world, but for sustaining economies too. But to do that, we must confront the challenges posed by climate change head-on. As we navigate this complex landscape, it's important to remember that agricultural productivity doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's intertwined with other critical issues like food security and climate resilience. And as we'll see in the next scenes, the interaction between these elements can either propel us towards a more sustainable and resilient agricultural sector, or plunge us into a vicious cycle of decline and vulnerability. A drop in productivity doesn't just hit the pocket, it shakes the very foundation of food security. Food security, a fundamental human right, yet so precariously balanced on the fulcrum of agricultural productivity. Food security is a term that packs a punch. It's the assurance that every individual at all times has the physical and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food that meets their dietary needs for an active and healthy life. This definition is not just about the availability of food, but also about its affordability, accessibility, and adequacy. This crucial concept is directly tied to agricultural productivity. When the fields are bountiful, markets are stocked, and food is accessible. But when agricultural productivity takes a hit, the ripple effects are felt far and wide. Any decrease in productivity can lead to shortages in food supply, sending prices soaring and making food less accessible, particularly for the most vulnerable populations. And here's where the climate change enters the stage, playing a role that no one asked for. Climate change can be the villain that disrupts this delicate balance. We're talking about extreme weather events, like droughts and floods, changing rainfall patterns, and increasing temperatures. These factors can reduce agricultural productivity, leading to lower crop yields and livestock productivity. But it's not all doom and gloom. While climate change poses significant risks, it also presents opportunities for innovation and adaptation. With the right strategies and technologies, we can enhance the resilience of our agricultural systems, ensuring that they can absorb, recover from, and adapt to these climatic shocks. This resilience is, in fact, the key to maintaining agricultural productivity and ensuring food security in the face of climate change. So, you see, food security is like a game of dominoes, where one small push can set off a chain of events. But with strategic planning and climate-smart practices, we can keep the dominoes from falling. In the face of these risks, the need for climate resilience becomes glaringly apparent. Climate resilience, the shield that stands between our food systems and the wrath of climate change. In the world of agriculture, climate resilience stands as the bedrock that allows us to weather the storm of climate change. But what exactly does this term mean? In essence, climate resilience refers to the capacity of our agricultural systems to absorb, recover, and adapt to climatic shocks. Picture it as the ability of a farmer's field to withstand a drought, flood, or heat wave and still produce a bountiful harvest that keeps our plates full and our bodies nourished. Now, why is climate resilience so essential? Well, imagine a world where our agricultural systems are brittle, unable to cope with the ever-increasing severity and frequency of extreme weather events. In such a world, every drought or flood could spell disaster for our food supplies and economies. Climate resilience is our safeguard against this grim scenario. It's the armor that protects our food systems from the blows of climate change, ensuring we can continue to feed our growing global population. But climate resilience isn't just about weathering the storm. It's about coming out stronger on the other side. It's about using these climatic shocks as catalysts for innovation and adaptation, turning challenges into opportunities for growth. For instance, a farmer faced with recurrent droughts might adopt drought-resistant crop varieties, invest in water-efficient irrigation systems, or diversify their farm with livestock or agroforestry. These adaptations not only make their farm more resilient to droughts, but can also boost their productivity and profitability, contributing to food security. In essence, enhancing climate resilience is a win-win. It's a strategy that not only safeguards our food systems against the impacts of climate change, but also opens up opportunities for improving agricultural productivity and food security. It's a strategy that transforms the threat of climate change into an opportunity for innovation, growth, and sustainability. Climate resilience isn't just about surviving, it's about thriving in the face of adversity. When these elements work in harmony, we witness a virtuous cycle of growth and adaptation. Imagine a dance where every move is synchronized, each step leading seamlessly into the next. That's the dance of agricultural productivity, food security, and climate resilience when they're in balance. This balance creates a positive feedback loop, a virtuous cycle that can sustain communities and economies, even in the face of climate change. In this dance, resilient agricultural practices serve as the rhythm. These practices, born out of innovation and adaptation, are designed to thrive in changing climates. They boost productivity by making more effective use of resources and reducing losses from extreme weather events. The result? A bountiful harvest regardless of the climatic odds. But the dance doesn't stop there. With more productive farms comes greater food security. When the fields are full, markets are stocked, and prices are stable. Everyone, from the urban dweller to the rural farmer, has access to the food they need to lead healthy, productive lives. And here's the beautiful part. This food security doesn't just fill bellies, it fills communities with hope and confidence in the future. It provides a stable platform for further investments in resilience and innovation, driving the cycle forward. It's a cycle where each beat amplifies the next. More resilient practices lead to higher productivity, which ensures food security, which in turn feeds back into greater resilience. It's a dance that builds on itself, growing stronger and more vibrant with each turn. But remember, this dance isn't self-sustaining. It requires careful choreography, a commitment to innovation, and a focus on long-term resilience over short-term gains. It requires us to value not just the harvest we reap today, but the soil that will sustain us tomorrow. In this cycle, every challenge faced becomes an opportunity for growth. And in a world where the climate is changing, where each day brings new challenges, we need every opportunity we can get. That's the power of the virtuous cycle. That's the promise of climate-smart agriculture. However, the cycle can turn vicious, a spiral of decline triggered by the adverse effects of climate change. This is a scenario where the triad of agricultural productivity, food security, and climate resilience no longer dance in harmony. Instead, they fall into a discordant rhythm, each negatively influencing the other. Picture this. As the climate changes, extreme weather events become more frequent and severe. These events, from droughts to floods, can drastically reduce agricultural productivity. Crops fail, livestock perish, and the overall output of the agricultural sector drops. This isn't just an economic issue. It's a matter of survival for the millions who depend on agriculture for their livelihoods. As agricultural productivity decreases, the food supply becomes unreliable. Crop failures lead to shortages, and these shortages lead to increased food prices. The inflation hits the most vulnerable the hardest, those who can barely afford food as it is. This is food insecurity in action, a direct consequence of the decline in agricultural productivity. But the cycle doesn't stop there. Food insecurity, in its turn, weakens climate resilience. Resources that could have been invested in building resilience, in adopting more sustainable farming practices, are instead diverted to immediate survival needs. The focus shifts from long-term sustainability to short-term survival, leaving the agricultural sector vulnerable to future climatic shocks. And so, the cycle continues. Each round of climatic shocks further diminishes agricultural productivity, leading to more food insecurity, which in turn weakens climate resilience. It's a vicious cycle, a feedback loop that reinforces the negative impacts and makes it increasingly difficult to break free. But break free we must. This cycle is not inevitable. It's the result of choices we've made and practices we've adopted. And just as we've made these choices, we can make different ones. We can choose to prioritize climate resilience in our agricultural practices. We can choose to safeguard our food security by investing in sustainable farming. Breaking this cycle requires a concerted effort, a shift in practices, and most importantly, a change in mindset. It's a challenge, no doubt. But it's a challenge we must meet if we are to ensure a sustainable and resilient future for us all. From the fields to the policy tables, grassroots movements are driving change. These movements, born from the soil and sweat of local communities, are the beating heart of the fight for climate resilience in agriculture. They are often composed of farmers, environmental activists, local leaders, and other concerned citizens who see firsthand the devastating impacts of climate change on our food systems. Grassroots movements play a vital role in advocating for sustainable farming practices, pushing for policy reforms, and educating the public about the importance of climate resilience. They work tirelessly, planting trees to combat soil erosion, promoting organic farming to enhance soil health, and raising awareness about the importance of protecting our ecosystems. These actions, while seemingly small, can snowball into significant changes. They help shape the narrative around climate resilience, bringing it to the forefront of public discourse and making it a key issue for policymakers. But grassroots movements are not just about advocacy, they're also about action. They demonstrate that sustainable farming is not just a distant dream, but a tangible reality that can be achieved with the right resources and support. Through their efforts, they showcase the potential of climate-smart agriculture, proving that it's possible to produce food in a way that's not just productive but also resilient and sustainable. However, grassroots movements can't do it alone. They need the backing of strong policies that support their cause. They need funding for research into climate-resilient farming methods, incentives for farmers to adopt these practices, and assistance to help communities recover from the impacts of climate change. These movements are the catalysts for change, but policies are the fuel that helps this change spread and take root. Together, they can create a powerful force for climate resilience in agriculture, ensuring that our food systems can withstand the challenges of the future. These movements are sowing the seeds of change, but for them to grow, they need the support of policy reforms. Policy, the guiding hand that can steer us towards a climate-resilient future. The importance of policy reform in addressing the triad challenge of agricultural productivity, food security, and climate resilience cannot be overstated. Consider policy as the compass for our journey, directing our steps towards a robust and resilient agricultural sector. By integrating climate resilience into agricultural policies, we can promote sustainable practices that boost productivity and ensure food security, even in the face of changing climatic conditions. Policy reform can stimulate innovation by incentivizing the adoption of climate-smart agricultural practices. Whether it's providing funding for research into drought-resistant crops or offering tax breaks for farmers who switch to sustainable methods, policy can be a powerful tool for change. But policy reform isn't just about top-down directives. It also has the power to empower grassroots movements. By providing a supportive framework and resources, policy reform can help these movements scale their efforts. Imagine a local community group advocating for sustainable farming. With the right policies in place, this group could receive grants to run educational programs or implement pilot projects. This not only amplifies their impact, but also demonstrates that sustainable practices are not just feasible, but profitable, encouraging others to follow suit. Policy reform can also foster societal change by making sustainability and resilience in agriculture a national priority. This can help shift societal values and behaviors towards more sustainable practices, bolstering grassroots movements' efforts and creating a virtuous cycle of improvement and adaptation. However, policy reform doesn't happen in a vacuum. It requires broad societal support to succeed. The push for policy reform must come from all of us, from the individual farmer to the consumer, from the researcher to the policymaker. Effective policies can lay the groundwork for a more sustainable agriculture sector, but they need societal support to succeed. So let's join hands and work together to shape a future where agricultural productivity, food security, and climate resilience are not just aspirations, but realities. Societal change, the wind of change that can turn the tide in our battle against climate change. It is the transformation in attitudes, behaviors, and norms of a society that can drive impactful action towards a more sustainable and resilient agricultural sector. Let's start by understanding that societal change is not an isolated phenomenon. It is deeply intertwined with policy reform and grassroots movements. Just as a windmill harnesses the power of the wind to grind grain, societal change can drive policy reform. A shift in societal values towards sustainability and resilience in agriculture can create a demand for policy actions that support these practices. This demand can then stimulate policymakers to enact reforms that prioritize climate resilience in agriculture. But it doesn't stop there. Effective policy reforms, in turn, can empower grassroots movements. By providing a framework and resources, these reforms can help scale the efforts of these movements, amplifying their impact. Imagine it as a ripple effect. A single pebble tossed into a pond can create ripples that spread far and wide. Similarly, a single policy reform can spark a wave of action that propels grassroots movements forward, driving societal change on a larger scale. And then, there's the relationship between societal change and grassroots movements. These movements are often born out of a desire for change, a shift in societal attitudes towards a particular issue. As society begins to value sustainability and resilience more, it bolsters the efforts of grassroots movements advocating for climate action. This mutual reinforcement between societal change and grassroots movements creates a virtuous cycle, each fueling the other, pushing us closer to our goal of a climate-resilient agricultural sector. Societal change is indeed a powerful force, one that can shape the course of our future. It can turn the vicious cycle of climate change impacts into a virtuous cycle of resilience and sustainability. The dance of the triad is complex, but with the right steps, we can ensure a food-secure, climate-resilient future. In the dance of the triad, every step counts. As we draw our exploration to a close, let's take a moment to revisit the intricate dance between agricultural productivity, food security, and climate resilience. Agricultural productivity, the cornerstone of any agrarian economy, is being threatened by the harsh realities of climate change. With extreme weather events, shifting rainfall patterns, and rising temperatures, our crops and livestock are under siege. Yet, even in these challenging times, we've seen how innovative and resilient agricultural practices can not only withstand these changes, but also thrive, producing more while using fewer resources. Food security, a fundamental human right, is directly linked to this agricultural productivity. Any decrease in productivity can lead to shortages in food supply, increased prices, and reduced access to food, the very definition of food insecurity. However, when agricultural productivity is high, food security is bolstered, ensuring that everyone, everywhere, has access to the food they need for a healthy and productive life. Climate resilience, the capacity to absorb, recover, and adapt to climatic shocks, is the secret ingredient that ties everything together. By enhancing climate resilience in agriculture, we can maintain agricultural productivity and ensure food security, even in the face of climate change. We've also seen how these three elements can either feed into a virtuous cycle of improvement and adaptation, or a vicious cycle of decline. The choice is ours to make. If we choose wisely, we can leverage this triad to create a sustainable, resilient, and food-secure future. The role of grassroots movements, policy reforms, and societal change cannot be overstated in this dance. Grassroots efforts can catalyze significant policy reforms, which in turn can empower these movements and drive societal change. It's a synergistic relationship that can have a profound impact on our agricultural systems and the world at large. In the dance of the triad, every step counts, and each of us has a part to play. Whether you're a farmer in the field, a policymaker in the halls of power, or a consumer at the grocery store, your choices and actions matter. Together, we can choreograph a future where agricultural productivity, food security, and climate resilience coexist in harmony.